Every one of us has experienced the pain of betrayal. That agonizing feeling when the trust and expectation placed in a loved one crumble and shatter. But what if the deepest, most unconditional loyalty didn't come from kin or friend, but from the very wilderness we often seek to conquer? At the heart of the majestic Masai Mara Reserve, Ilera Vane built a sanctuary defined by mutual trust between humans and animals. The core value of the reserve was shaped by an unspoken promise, a sacred covenant she made with a tiny, orphaned lion cub named Kofi. In contrast, her adopted son, Zane, saw the reserve as nothing more than a profitable venture. Today, Ilera has been ousted from the main house by her own son and daughter-in-law. She is exiled, alone in a small shack, forced to watch her life's work distorted and ruined by greed. Ilera has lost almost everything that belonged to the human realm. But the savannah never forgets a kindness. The wilderness, personified by the now mighty Kofi, is about to deliver the final verdict on the true source of allegiance. This is the story of a loving mother, a son blinded by avarice, and the animal that kept its vow until the very end. Ilera Vane did not come from wealth. She built the reserve from scratch, driven by a deep and unwavering respect for the savannah's ecological balance. Her philosophy was simple but profound. Humans can coexist without destroying nature, and trust, not weapons, is the most powerful conservation tool. That trust was put to the test one harsh afternoon when she found a lion cub named Kofi. His mother had been killed by poachers. The small, lonely cub shivered beneath the shade of an acacia tree. Ilera intervened, not as a cold scientist, but with the instinct of a mother. She did everything she could to save him. She shared her dwindling half-ration of milk, hand-fed him tiny amounts, and wrapped him in her old shirt for warmth overnight. It was not just an act of rescue, but an unspoken covenant etched between two lives. She gave the cub life. He gave her a purpose grander than her own species. Kofi was healed and released into the wild, but he frequently returned to Ilera's vicinity to signal his presence. That bond was completely pure and untainted by human material calculations. Years later, Ilera's life welcomed another sacrifice when she found Zane. Zane was a lost child, in need of a home and a family. Ilera, always yearning for an heir to carry on her conservation ideals, gave everything to her adopted son. She worked tirelessly to ensure he received the best education in the city. She sold a portion of her personal land, diverting much-needed anti-poaching funds for his tuition. Ilera chose family, believing that blood, even nourished blood, would be the one to bear this mission. Ilera's life's work seemed to reach the peak of hope with the birth of Tiemu, the albino elephant calf. With his luminous ivory skin standing out against the deep green of the savannah, Tiemu was not only a rare animal, but also living proof of the reserve's success. He was a symbol of hope and restoration. Ilera dedicated all her time to Tiemu, viewing him as the most precious grandchild nature had bestowed upon her. Ilera had forged two sacred bonds, one with nature, Kofi, and one with humanity, Zane. Both were nurtured by her boundless sacrifice. But while Kofi grew up in the wild to become mighty, Zane grew up in comfort and learned only one value: money. The purity of Kofi's affection now stood in stark contrast to the complexity and fragility of Zane's, signaling the coming inevitable breakdown. Zane returned not only with a prestigious degree, but also with Shauna, his wife. Shauna was a city dweller who viewed the reserve only through the lens of finance and profit. To her, the roar of a lion was a business opportunity to be maximally exploited. To Ilera, it was a sacred language. Under Shauna's influence, Zane began to view the mother who sacrificed everything for him as conservative and her ideals as outdated. The conflict didn't unfold in noisy arguments, but through cold, administrative manipulation. Zane and Shauna exploited their knowledge of law and finance, gradually seizing control of the board. They manipulated documents, froze fund accounts, and slowly pushed Ilera out of all management positions. She was backed into a corner, unable to defend herself against the very person she had trusted with everything. The pinnacle of cruelty came when they demanded she move out of the main house, where she had spent her life building, and relocate to a dilapidated old shack tucked away in a neglected area. Alara was exiled on her own land, treated as a redundant remnant in her own legacy. Despite being isolated in the crumbling shack, Alara never stopped warning them. Zane's exclusive adventure tourism project opened up strictly protected areas. She knew this would create massive security gaps, especially the risk of poachers exploiting the chaos to target Tiemu, the precious albino elephant. She pleaded with them to tighten security, but Zane and Shauna merely dismissed her, claiming she was delusional and blinded by old age. The tragedy struck quickly, just as Alara had predicted. One morning, Alara received the chilling news: Tiemu was gone. Due to the negligence of the new security staff, hired by Zane to cut costs, the albino calf had wandered away from the herd. Now, Tiemu was not just lost, but was being ruthlessly tracked by an international poaching gang. Zane and Shauna were in utter panic. Their panic was not for Timu's life, but because they knew that if this mascot vanished, all their investments, reputation, and business ambitions would instantly collapse. Alara, from her small shack, watched the ensuing chaos. She did not pray for those who betrayed her, but only for the safety of the innocent creature. Now that human justice had failed, she could only rely on the sacred covenant with nature, her only hope bearing the name Kofi. This crisis would be the final test of true loyalty. Tiemu was facing extreme danger. His albino skin made him not only vulnerable to the scorching savanna sun, but also a perfect, prominent target in the sights of the poachers. Zane and Shauna continued their futile search, but their anxiety stemmed only from financial fear, not genuine affection for the creature. On a pitch-black night, as Tiemu was cornered by the international poachers, a gigantic shadow suddenly appeared. It was Kofi. However, the lion's roar that echoed was not a hunting call, but a powerful, protective bellow. He attacked and drove off the poachers with ferocity and precision. Kofi, who should have seen the young elephant as prey or a rival, was instead protecting him. The small, vulnerable life was guarded by the deep bond Alara had created. Kofi did not stop there. He did not lead Tiemu back to the elephant herd, but began to guide the exhausted and lightly injured calf through the savannah. He remembered the safest place where pure love was found, Alara's old shack. Alara, hearing the unusual noise, rushed outside. She was astonished by the surreal scene, the enormous Kofi leading a snow-white albino calf. As Kofi stopped before the porch, he looked at Alara, and in his glowing golden eyes was the undeniable confirmation of the old covenant. The unspoken loyalty had been fulfilled. Alara, without a hint of fear, stepped forward to care for Tiemu. Zane and Shauna, following the tracks, arrived at the shack right at the climax. Their gazes froze. Before them was an undeniable tableau. Tiemu, the million-dollar mascot, safe in Alara's healing embrace, while Kofi stood guard, proud and untouchable. It was a public humiliation. They had stripped Alara of everything with paperwork, but they could not take away the respect and love of nature. Kofi's loyalty was stronger than all their greed and betrayal. They might own the land, but Alara owned the trust. In that moment, Zane collapsed. He realized this failure was not about losing money, but about losing his humanity. Nature had chosen its true protector, and it was not him. The sentence pronounced by the savannah was final and unappealable. Zane could not stand. He sank down on the shack's porch, tears streaming down his face. His apology was not just for seizing the reserve, but for betraying the mother who had saved his life. He admitted that greed and fleeting luxury had blinded him and Shauna, causing them to lose the ability to distinguish true value from false profit. Shauna, standing beside him, also bowed her head in shame and remorse. Alara gently approached. She didn't need a verbal apology, for Kofi's actions had said it all. She embraced Zane, without a word of reproach or judgment. Her words were not about law or inheritance. Zane, this legacy is not an asset to make money, but a responsibility to love and protect. This bond is what needs guarding, not hatred. She entrusted the exhausted TMU back to them, not as a gift, but as a new test of their commitment and honesty. Zane and Shauna learned this terrifying lesson. They reinstated Alara's management rights and decided to change completely. They abandoned the adventure tourism projects and began to learn conservation principles from their mother. They understood that inheritance was not land, but the responsibility of stewardship. The reserve gradually revived under their new, honest, and respectful management. Many years later, Alara passed away peacefully in the place she loved most. Her funeral was simple and intimate. As the family and friends of the reserve mourned, a familiar shadow appeared, Kofi. The aging, magnificent lion slowly approached her grave. He did not growl or pose a danger, but gently lay down, resting his large head and thick mane upon the newly turned earth. And in a moment of absolute silence, Kofi, the faithful friend and the only one who kept his promise, took his last breath beside the woman who saved his life. His unconditional loyalty was fulfilled. This story is not just a Savanna legend. It is a profound lesson in unconditional loyalty. Nature does not demand, it only gives and remembers. Kofi taught us that the deepest connections are not bought with money, nor determined by blood, but are forged through respect and genuine love. We seek connection and trust, yet often forget the silent promises we have made to those weaker than ourselves. What are you cultivating loyalty to in your life? Are you honoring those silent promises? Please share your thoughts on this story in the comment section below. If you are moved by this tale of love and loyalty, support us by subscribing to the channel today and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss our next human interest stories. Let's build a world where loyalty is an immortal legacy.